Here we have episode 8 of Sword Art Online, Alicization, aka Sword Art Online, Season 3. And as always, I just want to preface that I do not plan on having every single little detail down, just the ones that I think are important or the ones that stood out to me. So let's go ahead and jump into episode's 8 little brief review. So honestly, this episode did everything extremely well. I will say the first time that I watched it, I cried at two different parts. One part was obviously the flower scene with Kirito in the garden, and then the second part was actually when Kirito was fighting against Levantine, and the animation there honestly just like brought me to tears. I was just like, just like one and maybe two tears just like came down the cheek, and I was like, bruh, that's so beautiful. And then of course the flower scene, like I cried when I read it in the light novel, so of course I was going to cry when I saw the exquisite animation that they used there. So just to kind of jump into if they did anything differently than the light novel, there were quite a bit of slight differences. So the first difference is that Kirito kind of like is confident. He kind of goes into fighting Volo Levantine, and he's like, I'm gonna win. I want to show off all of my skills for Lina Senpai, and that's what I'm going to do. He's like, there's no way I can't lose. I gotta win. Actually, what really happened is in the light novel, he kind of struggled with this decision of should he win or should he throw the match? Because imagine this scenario that Kirito is actually in. The senpai that is kind of taking care of him for the last year, that he has never won a single time against, he is going to go against the person that she has never beaten. And if he beats him, what does that say about her? So he had these questions like, should I do this? He's like, I don't want Lina Senpai to kind of feel terrible for always beating me and then losing to him. And, all these questions, Kirito had going into this match. But he finally, as soon as, they get into the battle or the battle, and they get into the heat of the moment, Kirito's like, look, I have to win this. It's not just about me. It's about Yu-Gi-Oh! It's about Lina. It's about, Lisbeth, Sinon, Asuna, Suguha, everybody. It's more than just Kirito. So he goes in and he decides, I'm going to give it everything he has, and goes in there, and as we know, he wins. The next thing that was a little different is that there was actually no referee when the fight happened. I know in the anime, Volo is like, hey, by the way, Sordelina, can you be the referee for this match? Yeah, there was none of that. Sordelina goes back to the seats, and she's like, yo, I'm finna watch over here. They both kind of understood, like, hey, we don't really need one because whoever draws blood first wins. So Kirito, gets blood off of Volo, he wins, and vice versa. So they didn't need that. One thing that was briefly shown in the anime is that when Kirito is standing there with his sword, let me grab where's my sword? Okay, here we go. When Kirito is standing there with his sword against Volo, there are two things that is going on. Number one, the first one is that when Kirito's sword grows a few inches, we notice that a slight angle or a slight camera shot is thrown to Volo. He notices that Kirito's sword grows a little bit. Kirito acknowledges this sword growth by grabbing on with two hands and then continuing to fight or continue to struggle against Volo. Nobody else in the entire arena actually notices it. What the book says is that they just assumed that it was just some kind of mere illusion that Kirito was able to do, and only those two were the ones that noticed it. Now, the second thing, the reason why the fight was actually a lot more intense in the book. Like, we got to see, Kirito's point of view, what he was thinking at the time, all of these different things. And we see, everything was very well done, but it just felt more it just felt like there was more at stake in the light novel, because we see Kirito like saying like, dude, you know, he's pushing me back. You know, he's pushing me back. If I lose, you know, 1 to 2 more just like little inches of leverage that he had with Volo, his sword skill's gonna get deactivated and he will not be able to contest this fight and he's going to lose. Also, on the flip side, if he continues to push forward just a few more inches, he's going to be able to knock Volo Levantane's ability and deactivate it, and he can actually get the win. So there was a lot of tension in this one moment. Now, we obviously know that they clash apart, and then Kirito comes in, and just as they're about to swing at each other, everything drops because Azurika comes in, and she's like, yo, it's a draw. Congrats. Let's go. Now, we're going to jump forward to the end of the duel, where Kirito kind of learns this after he gets the draw, is that he was actually allowed to forfeit from any punishment duel. So at any point in time, he could have forfeited, and Volo would have had to say, like, he would have had to, like, accepted that. He would have had to acknowledge that, because that is the rule. But we didn't know that. Kirito didn't know that until the end of it, because Sortalina tells him that. So it's a little unfortunate, but hey, we got a good fight. We got fantastic animation. I ain't even mad. Thank you, Kirito. Now, the last part that I want to touch on is going to be the after party / flower scene. So basically, they don't really talk about much. They don't go into much detail between Kirito and Sortalina. They just say, hey, we went to Sortalina's room. Yu-Gi-Oh! And Golgorosa got drunk. I had to limit myself to 2 drinks, and that was extremely difficult. And then they jumped straight into, there were 15 minutes left in the primary's curfew, so I took Yu-Gi-Oh! Back to the room because he was drunk and couldn't get there by himself. Kirito enjoys a nice little cool breeze that comes through their window, but he notices, like, hey, I noticed a smell of a particular animal, and we had that for lunch, like dinner or lunch yesterday. Why do I smell that right now? And he looks out the window, and he sees Rayos and Humbert going to the flower area. So he darts out of his room, and he goes to catch up with him, and then we have the little scene right there. Now, we know he goes in there, sees his flowers are messed up. There were actually 3 reasons why Kirito decided to start planting those flowers. Kirito wanted to experience mental image training. He wanted to see if he could actually get these flowers to grow in a region where they were never supposed to grow. They were never known to grow here. So it was actually very, very interesting, because Kirito didn't just pick some random dirt from, you know, maybe the school, or he didn't get any from a store in Zakaria. He actually went outside of town to a land where nobody owned. That's actually very important. Nobody owned the land. He took this dirt and he used that specific dirt for this this bed of flowers that he is planting. Now, the reason why he's trying to experiment, because nobody has grown flowers here. These flowers are only in a specific region. So in order for him to make a region-locked flower grow in a different region, had to be because of his image training. So that was his first reason. The second reason Kirito wanted to grow the Zephilias is because Sortalina had never seen these flowers before. Now, initially, Kirito's graduation gift was going to be these flowers, but number one, he didn't want to tell Sortalina about that because he was still having difficulties growing these flowers. Number two, he kind of just thought on his feet, and he was like, hey, I'm going to give you these sword skills. I'm going to show you this instead, because he didn't know if it would actually happen. So just to kind of prove it, in the book, in book number 10, where we are at, with episode 8, he says, the second reason was to fulfill Lena's desire to see a real Zephilia flower just once. Then, finally, he gets all the flowers to help his his Zoophilias grow. He brings a little bouquet of Zoophilias, and for the first time, Kirito was actually able to see a genuine smile and some tears from Sortalina when she sees those flowers. It was actually so adorable. I definitely cried in the book when I was reading this particular part. The third reason is the actual reason where he said, you know, unconsciously or subconsciously, I didn't really think that I had this actual reason, but then he goes into saying, you know, he felt attached to it, yada, 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 and we get that part. Now, the last thing that I did want to briefly mention is this, and it, I believe, is going to be extremely important. This kind of sets up something for something a little later down the road. So, it says, at the end of March, second seat disciple Sortalina Surlut defeats Volo Levantine, as we know. Then it goes on to say, 2 weeks after her graduation, she appeared in the Imperial Battle Tournament, but in the first round, she ran into the representative of the Norlangarth Knighthood and lost by a slim margin after a fierce battle. It is extremely important that we notice she lost. Otherwise, they would not have said, hey, she goes in and she loses, or hey, she goes in and wins. It's very important that we notice this because it is a huge detail later down the road. So keep this in mind. Everything else to a T, this episode was fantastic. Honestly, if you think this was the best episode so far, I would not argue with you, but I would say this: if this were a meal, I would say this is only the salad, baby. This is only the appetizer. This is nothing compared to what we have coming up later in the next few episodes. Now, episode 9's little review will be coming soon, but to wrap up episode 8, I do want to say we are completely done with book 10, and we will be moving into book 11. Now, here's book 11 for us. Right here, Ronnie and Tease, the pages that we saw at the end of episode 8 are going to play a huge part in moving us forward through the story. So huge shout outs to them before we get into it on our next review. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. As always, that's all I got. So much love, God bless, and peace out.